studio. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Abby.
Well,
and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. And let's pick it up from the number of items we've seen between the regional countries. When you talk about the state of trade, where are we right now, especially in the East African community?
Trade is important for every economy. It's important because it's good. It promotes economic growth, and it also creates jobs. Mm-hmm. And we try to do that through ensuring that you have a free trade that is fair and also that operates in an environment that's conducive to all. So in East Africa, I would say, first of all, in Kenya, our trade has been growing. And I think it's just that you need to know which trade you're talking about, because there is exports and there is imports. Mm-hmm. And when we talk of exports, we refer to exports of goods and exports of services. Mm-hmm. And similarly, imports of goods and imports of services. Mm-hmm. Combined together, we have had a consistent growth. And I think imports have tended to grow faster than exports, at least in the case of Kenya. As we speak right now, in the latest data that was provided by the Economics Survey, we imported about 1.6 trillion worth of goods, whereas we exported about 600 billion worth of goods. So that's about 3 times imports being higher than exports. But within the region, I think Kenya still ranks ahead. You are aware Kenya is among top 10 economies in Africa. We were number 8 the last time I checked the figures.
Correct.
And we need to look at trade in the context of reforms that have taken place within East Africa. We entered into a customs union in 2005. We implemented it for 5 years. In 2010, we adopted a common market protocol, which all countries have been making efforts to operationalize. And as we speak now, a lot of efforts also are being made by the central banks to move into a monetary union and ultimately into a political federation.
All right.
But over time, trade has grown. The level of inter-regional trade within East Africa has grown. Previously, from the time around 90s, it was around 10%. And we speak now of a figure oscillating between 16 to 18% within East Africa, which is the highest when you look at most of the inter-regional trade in the rest of the countries, particularly Africa. Mm-hmm. The average for Africa is around 10%.
Okay. And Dr. you've raised pertinent issues there on the numbers, quite substantial numbers. But in equal measure, we've also seen a number of barriers emerging. For instance, we did see the trade tiff Kenya had with Tanzania just a few months ago. And this involved the banning of chicks. And we've also seen a number of other setbacks when it comes to importation of maize to beef products. How far are we in terms of negotiations in order to avoid the stalemate, which eventually sees the business community bearing the brunt?
Abi, I think from where I sit, we have tended to see a little bit of drama, a lot of drama in a few of the instances that have occurred. I think you need to look at the entire East Africa and look at non-tariff barriers. And within the East Africa community, we have national monitoring committees of barriers, sure, where you monitor and report. And in each country, we try as much as possible. As soon as you get a non-tariff barrier, you are able to report. Let me tell the listeners that when we talk of non-tariff barriers, we refer to those barriers that emanate from restrictions to trade other than tariffs, mm-hmm, or where you impose a duty on imports or an export. So it could be licensing, it could be permit fees, it could be delays coming out of customs processes or documentation. All that are referred to non-tariff barriers. And those non-tariff barriers are not only within East Africa. Even within Kenya, we have a lot of non-tariff barriers. Trade between counties, mm-hmm, have tended also to be impeded by, for instance, the imposition of counties on fees, mm-hmm, for trucks, for instance, crossing across, where you require certain branding let's say from Nairobi going to Nakuru and others, and you require that you have to pay some cess. So I wanted us to look at it in that context. Number two is to say that there has been dramatic reduction in number of non-tariff barriers within East Africa. I think in 2016, June, we had about 26 non-tariff barriers, and a lot of them have been resolved. So I just wanted, before I answer your question on the specific on Tanzania, to say that a lot of effort has been made to reduce those barriers. And in fact, statistics clearly indicate that those efforts have brought in some results. For instance, the time, that you take to export a good from, say, Kigali to Mombasa has reduced by about 20%. It used to take about 33 days. Now it takes around 26 days. The time it takes to import a good has also dramatically reduced, I think around 15%. It used to take around 36 days. Now it's around 26 or 27. I need to check the latest numbers. And you also need to look at the time it takes for a truck to go from Mombasa, say, to Kampala and the rest. There's been dramatic reduction. You need to look at the report on logistics, and you will see that the performance has been good.
All right.
Having said that, it is true also we have had some challenges. And I think these are specific to certain countries. I can only say Tanzania. We also have issues, a few with Uganda. We have had cases even with Rwanda. For instance, Uganda, we have had a case of beef restrictions for a while.
Sure.
Now, coming to Tanzania, yes, we have had a few challenges in the recent past. First, we started when our LPG products from Tanzania could not enter into Kenya, nor wheat, because of certain requirements by the Customs Authority, that is the KRA,
yes,
to request of imposition of duty. And also, I think there was a bit of, you could see countermeasures on the other side that then restricted our milk from going into Tanzania, and a few other commodities. You could see clearly there were issues. However, we reached out to one another, and I recall visiting the border and meeting with my colleague PS from Tanzania, and thereafter we agreed on a bilateral meeting which we held in Dar es Salaam. And in Dar es Salaam, we were able to resolve some items that we could resolve quickly. And so from then on, we have had smooth flow of LPG products. Wheat is now moving without any restrictions. Milk products are moving. So there is an improvement on those. However, there are still a few other, a number of commodities that we still have problems trading. Sure. That come from the restrictions that, for instance, I think multiple institutions in Tanzania having to require, either to inspect or to charge some fees. You have weights and measures, for instance, has to make some changes. You have also radiation and atomic board, which has to make some changes. You have also dairy board for Tanzania. And then you have TFDA, what we call Tanzania Food and Drug Authority. Yes. And then even the problem we have among our counties is also there. You find municipalities. If you go to Arusha, you are supposed to pay a certain amount of money per truck. And even the other counties. So all those combined together have tended to create a problem. Even non-recognition of certificates of origin issued from KRA, that our traders have complained that the Tanzanian Revenue Authority is not recognizing. So all those have been issues. We agreed on a matrix of issues in Tanzania, and we agreed we would meet this year. I would confirm to you that we are meeting again with Tanzania end of this month, and we will pick up from where we have left. And so the issue of banning of chicken, I think it was a little bit, of course, unfortunate, but I think I wanted us to see it from a more positive light. And we also see who could have been on the wrong in terms of that. Did that person who was exporting meet the requirements? We also need to look at that so that we don't just over-dramatize. Okay. Yeah. And P.S., moving the conversation forward, the president in his speech when he was being sworn in, he did make a clarion call that Kenya is opening its borders to other partners and also investors. And also we've seen the Trade Cabinet Secretary Aden Mohamed being very passionate about pushing the manufacturing agenda. Are we making any headway, or is it a pipe dream? I must say that that announcement was very handy in the sense that it's just taking manufacturing to a notch higher. You know, having manufacturing target of 15% of GDP is an ambitious target, and it is also one that is achievable if we have a whole of government approach. I think the ministry has already been doing a lot. We have a Kenya Industrial Transformation Plan, which has been on for a while and is now being looked at in the context of the new announcement, so that we make sure that we focus on areas like agro-processing, which is, I think if you look at the number of agricultural commodities being traded, and you try to ask yourself how much of that output is being processed, the latest figure I show is about 16%. We need to take it higher. By 2022, we want to see if we can take it to around 50%, so that whatever we export, we must have value added. Value addition has a number of benefits. We have leather, and there's a lot of work that has gone. We have the leather council, which is already, we have leather packs in place, and a lot is going on in that direction. We have also textile and apparel. And this is a sector that has done very well through our export processing zones authority, and especially targeting the US market. I think 65% of what we export now to US is coming from apparel and textile. And there are so many other range of issues, which I think, in my view, if we focus more, we will be able to improve the number of manufactured products. The latest figures on manufacturing, last year it was around 657 billion worth of goods that we manufactured, compared to, you know, the GDP.
Sure.
You can see that's around 8-point-something%.
Sure.
And to move it from 8 to 15, of course, will require us to make a lot of effort. And I think we are already organizing ourselves as a ministry to deliver that agenda, working with, of course, other entities of government. It will be a whole of government approach to delivering that target, in addition to the other 4 that His Excellency the President mentioned.
All right.
Yeah.
Many thanks, Dr. Chris Kipto. A pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your company. And we definitely will be engaging more and taking a spotlight on matters to do with trade, because it's one of the key pillars for Kenya's economy. We want to take a quick commercial break. We still have much more coming up after the break.